Imagine you're standing in the center of Rome early in the morning. The city is just waking up. There are still few tourists. The air is cool. In front of you rises a gigantic stone bowl. On one side, a perfectly preserved wall climbs several stories upward. On the other, there is a gaping wound. An enormous section is simply missing, as if someone cut a piece out of the building and carried it away. Why did the greatest amphitheater of antiquity collapse in such a strange way? Why does one side stand almost untouched, while the other has turned into ruins? Today, we will reconstruct a chain of events stretching nearly 2,000 years. The construction of the Colosseum began in 70 AD under Emperor Vespasian. It was not merely an architectural decision, it was a political gesture. The emperor wanted to return to the people land that Nero had previously seized for his luxurious private lake. The lake was drained. A massive foundation was poured in its place, and the construction of the largest amphitheater in history began. 8 years later, the structure was complete. 50,000 spectators, 4 tiers of seating, hundreds of arches. Beneath the arena lay a highly complex system of lifts and mechanisms. It was an ancient stadium equipped with the most advanced engineering of its time. It seemed eternal. But the giant had a hidden weakness. The Colosseum was built on the site of a drained body of water, and the soil beneath it turned out to be uneven. The northern side stood on dense limestone bedrock. The southern side rested on the former lake bed, where the ground was softer and more humid. The difference was invisible to the eye, but it was fatally important. Every earthquake, even a minor one, caused the southern part to sink slightly, millimeter by millimeter. For centuries, the building slowly shifted. The north stood like a monolith. The south moved. This was the beginning of a future catastrophe. In 1349, a powerful earthquake struck Italy. The southern wall, already weakened by time and subsidence, could not withstand the shock. Thousands of tons of stone collapsed. Dust darkened the sun. The arches fell one after another. The perfect ring of the amphitheater was torn apart. The northern section remained standing. The southern side turned into a heap of rubble. From that moment on, the Colosseum was never whole again. After the fall of the Roman Empire, the amphitheater ceased to function as an arena. People settled inside it. Houses were built within the arches. Workshops opened inside. Vegetables were grown on the former arena floor. The Colosseum became a residential quarter. Residents cut new doorways. They dismantled marble for everyday needs. Ancient blocks were reused as building material. For a medieval person, this was not a historical monument. It was a convenient stone structure. Gradually, the building lost its original appearance. After the collapse of the southern wall, official dismantling began. Stone was hauled away by carts. Travertine blocks were used in the construction of palaces, bridges, and churches. Parts of the Colosseum were incorporated into the walls of St. Peter's Basilica. Stone from it was also used in the construction of Palazzo Venezia. The Colosseum became a donor for the new Rome. The city literally grew from its body. Inside the walls were iron clamps that held the blocks together. They began to be pried out. Today, thousands of holes are visible on the facade. Traces of metal extraction. Each removed clamp weakened the structure. The Colosseum lost its internal framework and gradually turned into the horseshoe shape we recognize today. In the 16th century, the Pope declared the Colosseum a site of Christian martyrdom. Dismantling it became a sin. For the first time, the building began to be protected, not because of its architectural value, but because of its religious status. There is one paradox. Most ancient buildings crumble over time, but the concrete of the Colosseum actually grew stronger with age. The Romans used a special mixture of volcanic ash and lime. When water seeped into microcracks, a chemical reaction occurred inside. The material literally healed itself. The structure knew how to repair its own wounds, and yet it was destroyed. Why? Because concrete can be strong. But if you remove the iron skeleton from a structure, it loses stability. Thousands of iron clamps that once held the stone blocks together were pulled out during the Middle Ages. Each clamp was like a vertebra in a spine. Remove enough of them, and the body cannot stand straight. When they were taken out, the walls stopped working as one system. They became independent masses of stone, and the weight of the upper tiers began pressing downward. The Colosseum did not collapse overnight. It began to shed itself slowly, like an ancient tree whose core has been hollowed out. The stone forest. By the 15th century, the Colosseum no longer resembled an arena. It looked like a man-made canyon. Trees grew inside it. Rare plants settled into the cracks of its walls. Later, botanists counted more than 400 species of flora thriving there. It became a unique ecosystem. Birds built nests in the arches. Animals found shelter in the corridors. The giant, built for spectacle and blood, had turned into a stone sanctuary. And yet, dismantling continued. Marble columns were burned in kilns to make lime. Statues were smashed. Decoration vanished without a trace. What remained was a raw skeleton. The return of curiosity. In the 19th century, Europe began to look at antiquity differently. Archaeologists approached the Colosseum not as a quarry, but as a subject of study. They cleared the Hypogeum, the underground labyrinth beneath the arena. They discovered elevator shafts, mechanisms that lifted cages, traces of wooden platforms. The discovery shocked historians. Ancient Rome was far more technologically advanced than previously believed. The Colosseum became a symbol again, this time of science. Scars of preservation. If you look closely at the building today, you'll notice strange brick buttresses. They look foreign, almost intrusive. They date to the 19th century. Engineers realized that if the remaining section was not reinforced, it would follow the southern wall into collapse. Massive supports were built. Additional foundations were poured. It was one of the first large-scale restoration projects in Italy. For the first time in its history, people chose not to dismantle antiquity, but to preserve it. A modern threat. Every day, trains pass beneath Rome's streets. The metro runs close to the Colosseum. Each train creates micro-vibrations. To humans, they are imperceptible. To ancient stone, they are constant stress. Scientists have installed hundreds of motion sensors. They measure fluctuations in millimeters. The building literally breathes. Heat expands the stone. Cool air contracts it. Each cycle leaves a trace. The giant is still alive and still aging. The prophecy. There's an ancient phrase, as long as the Colosseum stands, Rome will stand. When the Colosseum falls, the world will fall. The idea survived centuries, and it carries symbolism. The Colosseum has become a measure of humanity's relationship with its past. We no longer use it as a quarry. We protect it. But the question remains, can we preserve it for another 1,000 years? The southern wall did not disappear for one single reason. It was destroyed by geology, the earthquake of 1349, stone extraction, the removal of iron clamps, centuries of everyday use. It was not a catastrophe, it was a process. The Colosseum is not just ruins. It is a chronicle of mistakes, greed, survival, and rescue. And perhaps if it had survived intact, it would not look as powerful. Its broken form makes it recognizable. It is not perfect, it is wounded. And that is why it feels alive. Deeper still, close your eyes. 50 to 70,000 people. One shared inhale, one unified scream. The Colosseum was an acoustic miracle. Its elliptical form amplified sound like a modern stadium. The roar of the crowd rose upward, striking the stone tiers and returning in waves. It could be heard beyond the arena walls. Today, there is silence. But if you arrive early in the morning, before the tourists, and clap your hands, the echo still answers, as if the walls remember. The word arena comes from the Latin harina, sand. Sand was used to absorb blood. After each fight, it was raked, replaced, smoothed. Every spectacle began with a clean surface, but beneath it lay layers of violence. Below the restored floor, you can still see the Hypogeum, the underground maze where gladiators waited, wild animals paced. The condemned stood in darkness. No one knew whether they would return. The Colosseum was not merely entertainment, it was an instrument of power. Roman emperors used games to control the masses, bread and circuses, the formula of stability. The grander the spectacle, the stronger the loyalty. An emperor could spare a defeated fighter. With a single gesture, he decided fate, and the crowd watched. Not just a fight, but absolute authority in motion. Today, around 7 million people visit the Colosseum each year. It is one of the most visited monuments on Earth. People take photos, record videos, post online, but rarely does anyone consider we are the quietest audience in its history. No blood, no screams, only footsteps on ancient stone. Imagine if the southern wall had never fallen. The Colosseum would appear massive, symmetrical, complete. But we wouldn't see its inner anatomy. The destruction exposed its structure. We see the arches, the ribs, the voids. Sometimes destruction reveals truth. Nearly 2,000 years. Empires vanished. Languages changed. Religions replaced one another. The Colosseum endured. It witnessed the fall of the Western Roman Empire, medieval chaos, the Renaissance, world wars. It has outlived every modern building, and still, its greatest enemy is not earthquakes. It is time, and time never stops. Shall we go even further into the myths, hidden legends, and darker interpretations? If you compare a human being to ancient stone, the difference is immense. A human lives for decades. Stone can endure for thousands of years, but stone has its own way of aging. Microcracks, thermal expansion and contraction, wind carrying dust from distant deserts, an extremely slow process of erosion, so slow that the human eye barely notices the change. But when measured with lasers, engineers detect movement in the walls. Millimeters over decades, the giant is still reshaping itself. Today, inside the Colosseum, you no longer hear battle cries, but you hear something else. The rustle of tourists, footsteps on ancient stone, wind passing through the arches. Biologists have discovered that rare plant species still live on its walls. Some of them grow only here. The Colosseum has become not only a historical monument, but a living microenvironment. There is something paradoxical in human nature. We do not love things that are completely destroyed, but we also do not love ancient things that look perfect. We are drawn to history in motion, incomplete, wounded, authentic. The Colosseum is the perfect symbol of that paradox. It does not look new, yet it refuses to disappear. The history of the Colosseum is not the story of one catastrophe. It is a quiet war between the geology beneath it, human greed, religious interpretation, scientific preservation, time. No one destroyed it entirely, but every century took something small, like water dripping onto stone. If the Colosseum had survived in flawless condition, it would be merely an ancient stadium. But its broken form is what makes it legendary. People do not admire only what is intact. We admire what has survived destruction. Now it is night. The city falls asleep. Lights of Rome reflect on ancient stone. The giant is silent. It is no longer an arena, not a quarry, not a residential quarter. It is a witness. It has seen empires that believed themselves eternal. It has seen people who thought time could be stopped. But time cannot be defeated. One can only leave a trace, and the Colosseum is humanity's trace on the face of the planet. If you would like, I can write a darker, more mystical ending, a version formatted as a cinematic documentary script with pauses and sound design, a shorter viral narration for video, or an alternative theory chapter with myths and conspiracies. Shall we continue?